Her paw prints were all over the window, like she was trying to write a message no one could read. That's how I found Scarlett, a 4-month-old German Shepherd puppy locked in a baking hot sedan under the Arizona sun. It was just past noon in Scottsdale, and the asphalt shimmered like water. I was walking back to my truck when I saw the car parked crooked, windows up, no shade, no noise. Then a flicker of movement caught my eye. At first, I thought I imagined it, just a shadow shifting behind the glass. But I walked closer, and there she was, curled on the back seat, panting, tiny chest rising fast. Her black and tan coat was soaked with sweat. She saw me and pressed her little paws against the window. There were dozens of marks like that, like she'd been begging someone, anyone. I froze. My name's Rick. I'm a 41-year-old auto mechanic, and I've seen engines explode, tires shredded 80 miles per hour. People survive things they shouldn't. But I've never seen anything like this. A puppy abandoned in a locked car in this heat. She wasn't barking, she wasn't crying. She was just staring like she'd already stopped believing someone would come. I looked around. No one. The strip mall lot was nearly empty. The store next door had been closed since last year. I called 911 with shaking hands, gave the plate number, location, everything. Then I dropped to my knees by the car and whispered through the glass, "Hold on, sweetheart. Help's coming." She didn't move, just pressed her forehead to the window and closed her eyes. Scarlett. I didn't know her name then, but I felt it. The fire inside her, the will to survive. She wasn't making a sound, but she was still fighting. I leaned against the hot metal and waited. I could hear my own heart, but hers, was it still beating? The dispatcher said a rescue unit was on the way, but minutes in this heat felt like hours. The temperature that day had already hit 97. And inside the sealed car, Dot. I could see it, the ripples in the air behind the glass, the plastic steering wheel warping under the sun. And right there, in the middle of it all, was this tiny German Shepherd puppy. Her tongue lolled from her mouth, dry and pale. Her chest was still moving, but slower now. I crouched by the window, shielding my eyes, trying to make contact. "Come on, baby, stay with me," I whispered, tapping the glass gently. She flinched, but didn't look. Her head drooped like she couldn't lift it anymore. That was the first moment I panicked. I glanced around the lot. A few people had walked by, most not even noticing. One guy in a business shirt looked straight at me and said, "It's just a dog." I swear my whole body went cold. Just a dog. "She's a puppy," I snapped back. "She's alive." I stood up and yanked on the door handle. Locked, of course. I circled the car, tried the others. Nothing. The sun was like fire on the metal. My palms were burning. I thought about smashing the... I had a wrench in my truck, but I hesitated. If the glass shattered wrong, it could hurt her. The last thing I wanted was to make things worse. So, I did the only thing I could. I knelt back down and kept talking to her. "My name's Rick. I've got 2 kids. We've got a backyard and a cold bowl of water waiting. You just got to hang on." She didn't answer, of course, but somehow I felt like she heard me. Her ear twitched, her eyes fluttered. I could see the pads of her paws raw from pressing against the searing hot glass. Her whole tiny body was shaking now. And then I heard it, the distant wail of a siren. It was coming fast, closer, louder. But was it fast enough? I stood in the middle of the lot, waving both arms, heart pounding. When they pulled up, I was already yelling. Puppy in the back seat. She's not moving. 2 firefighters jumped out before the truck even stopped rolling. One carried a long flat tool, some kind of wedge. The other had gloves and a thermal scanner. They didn't waste a second. One glanced through the fogged-up window and they moved like it was life or death. Because it was. The man with the wedge slipped it into the top of the door and began working it gently but fast. The other looked through the window again and muttered, "She's fading, dehydrated, breathing shallow." That was all I needed to hear. I turned away. I couldn't look. Then pop, the door unlocked. They opened it slowly. The heat that poured out hit us like a furnace blast. And there she was, curled in the corner of the back seat, her little paws stiff, her body limp. The black vinyl had scorched parts of her fur, and her breath was so quiet I thought I imagined it. One of the firefighters leaned in and scooped her up with gloved hands. "I've got her," he said, his voice tight. He passed her to me without hesitation, and just like that, I was holding her. Scarlett. She didn't squirm. She didn't bark. Dot. She just sagged into my arms, like she'd given up somewhere along the way. Her head lolled against my chest, and her fur was burning hot. I felt her heartbeat faint. But there, the firefighter said something about the closest shelter with emergency care, but I barely heard it. My whole world was this tiny German Shepherd puppy, lying in my arms like a melted candle. So still, so silent. Then she made a noise, a low, shaky whimper. Not fear, not pain, something else. Relief. She knew she wasn't alone anymore. But would she survive the next hour? Scarlett barely moved as we rushed her to the nearest shelter, equipped for emergency intake. Maricopa County Animal Care and Control. The firefighters insisted I ride along. Maybe they saw something in my face. Or maybe they knew she needed more than oxygen and fluids. She needed someone to stay. The inside of the rescue vehicle was cool, sterile, but my arms were sweating as I held her close, trying to steady my breathy. Trying not to panic. Her fur still radiated heat. Her eyes were barely open, half-lidded, unfocused, and she trembled every few minutes. Soft, involuntary spasms that made me hold her tighter. I whispered, "You're okay now, sweetheart. I've got you." It wasn't just something to say. I meant it. I didn't even know this German Shepherd puppy's name yet. But in that moment, I was all she had. And somehow, I felt like she was all I had too. When we arrived at the shelter, the staff was already waiting with a gurney and IV bags. They worked fast, efficient, cooling towels, fluids, gentle hands. They took her from me gently, and I followed like I didn't know how to stop. "Do you want to fill out a witness form?" someone asked. I nodded, but I couldn't take my eyes off her as they rolled her away. Just before she disappeared behind the exam room doors, she turned her head just slightly and looked back. That's when they named her. Scarlett. One of the techs said, soft. "She's got fire in her. She's still fighting." I smiled through the lump in my throat. Scarlett. It fit. Fierce, brave, and still burning inside. I sat in the waiting room for nearly 2 hours, hands still trembling, heart still racing. I kept imagining those paw prints on the glass, the way she'd pressed her body to the window. Not barking, not scratching, just hoping. And then a voice broke through. She's stable. She's sleeping now. I stood up too fast. My knees nearly gave out. She's strong, the vet added. She held on longer than most would have. You got there just in time. Those desperate little paw prints. When the shelter staff saw me walk in, they smiled like they'd been expecting me. She's alert today, one of the techs said. Stay tired, but hungry. They led me through the back hallway into a quiet recovery room. Scarlett was lying on a soft blanket inside a temperature-controlled kennel, her IV lines still taped gently to her paw. The second she saw me, her ears twitched. Then she lifted her head. Not much, just a few inches, but that was all it took. They told me she was about 4 months old. No microchip, no collar, no one had called. No one was looking for her. She's lucky you found her, one volunteer said. A few more minutes, and he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. That evening, I asked if I could come back tomorrow. They nodded. She responds to you. We'd love that. I tried to play it off. I'm no expert, I just happened to be there. But that night, sitting in my truck, I whispered to no one. Maybe that's what matters. She didn't know my name. She didn't know my past. But that German Shepherd puppy had chosen me the moment our eyes met through the glass. And I was already afraid of what would happen if I had to say goodbye. By the third day, Scarlett had enough strength to stand. Her legs were shaky, and her paws were still tender from the burns. But she took a few steps, wobbly and unsure, and looked around the recovery room like she was seeing the world for the first time. The staff moved her to a larger kennel with a small glass wall facing the hallway, a space used for pups that needed quiet, but weren't in critical condition anymore. I came every morning and sat beside her enclosure, reading, talking softly, just being there. That's when I noticed it. Every now and then, she would stop whatever she was doing, eating, sniffing, resting, and walk straight to that glass wall. She'd stand close, nose nearly touching, and stare through it silently, not looking at me,